I think the first point to make is an important one, that it's not just about the level of spending, it's about how you spend the resources that you have on education. So having said that, I think perhaps there are about 8 things I would emphasize. Because of the need to translate, I will maybe say 4 of them and then have an opportunity then to say the other 4. So the first thing, and this is very, very important, is of course to have all Thai children in school. So you have done a good job of reducing the numbers who are not in school, but still there are some who are not in school. And before I came here, we did a small exercise to estimate how much that is costing the economy. And it is surprising how much it is costing the economy, as much as 3% of GDP. So for these children who are not in school, that's equivalent to a waste, equivalent to about 1 year of economic growth. So that is the first point, get all the children in school. The second point, of course, is the second point, which is also about inclusion, is the need to focus from the beginning on the poorest children, the most disadvantaged, those who will have the greatest difficulty without support. And if we look at other countries, if we look at countries that are doing really well in the international comparisons, whether these are countries in Europe like Finland or countries in Asia like Singapore or Korea or Vietnam, we see that this is an important thing, the focus on the poor. Poor in 2 senses. One, those who come from poor backgrounds, and secondly, those who are not doing very well at school, regardless of their background, but to catch them early. And an important part of this then is that we should, maybe this is a dangerous thing to say, but we are sitting in Bangkok. We should be not so much thinking about what is going on in Bangkok, important though that is, but we should be thinking what is going on elsewhere. So that's the second point. The third point is the need to focus on learning, to get away completely from the attention to inputs. It is normal that because that ministries focus on inputs to education, on teachers, on school infrastructure, on books, on computers, and so on. But a focus only on inputs is insufficient. We must also focus on what results are being achieved or not achieved. So the whole mentality has to shift from one about teacher numbers and things of this type to one about children's learning, how to measure that, how to support that. In school, out of school, and indeed not just children but adults too, as the world moves more towards lifelong learning. The fourth point, which is also about learning, is the need that what goes on in the school should be much more active, but it should be much more of an interactive sort of a session in which the children are engaged very directly in all their activities. So this, I think, is the fourth point, the need to change pedagogy. Children need to be learning, as we have discussed, but what do they need to be learning? So the question is, especially at around the world, the content of the primary schools is more or less the same. Of course, it's different for different national history and so on, but different language, of course, but it's still more or less the same. But at the secondary level, we see huge variation, and we also see other countries beginning to adapt their secondary education more quickly, frankly, than is happening in Thailand. So I think you need to think about the organization of secondary education, its relevance to, especially to employment. So you have a system which is largely designed as a route towards higher education. But many of these students do not go to higher education. They go straight from secondary education into the workforce. So the question about how to adapt secondary education, what attention to pay to vocational skills, what balance between vocational and academic, how to have flexible systems so that children who start in one may decide that that is the wrong route for them can change. So I think this is one very important point about the skills, especially at secondary level. The second aspect of skills has to do with all the surveys about, including in Thailand, about what employers are looking for. So they're looking for three types of skills. They're looking for cognitive skills, ability to read or to calculate. They're looking for technical skills, which can be taught through vocational, or they can be taught on the job. And they are looking for these so-called soft skills or transferable skills. There are different phrases that are used. But these are really important skills. Skills to get along with other people, skills to multitask, skills to communicate, skills of this type. And it turns out these skills are even more important in the informal economy than they are in the formal economy. And this is again very important when you're thinking about future jobs, because not everybody is going to be in the formal economy. So that's on skills. Then on innovation. So how do you get all this change? How do you get all this inclusion and focus on learning and focus on relevance? You have to innovate. Why is it that education is such a conservative sector? If education was a business, it would not survive because it is not innovating all the time. So we need to foster a climate of innovation. And this, I think, is very crucial, whether it's about inclusion or it's about learning or it's about relevance. There should be constant and continuous innovation. And finally, accountability. So a friend of mine once said that he thought the only person who is held responsible when a student does not do well is that poor student themselves. And the teacher is not held accountable, and the school is not held accountable, and the system is not held accountable. And there's a lot of truth to that. So the question of how to make the education system accountable to the students, to the parents, and to the society more broadly.